So we have this story of the woman caught in adultery, and it is a message about a changing world and how we respond to this woman. He's teaching a crowd, and the people come forward, these Pharisees, and they want Jesus to do something. They confront him with this woman caught in adultery, and he says, well, are you going to follow the law or not? They're trying to set Jesus up, but also they're acting in their minds like God's avenging angels. They're the ones that are going to enforce things. They're going to condemn this person, and they're going to give every ounce of her blood to God, as it were, in this treatment. That's their understanding of God. That's their understanding of the faith as one of justice and judgment and condemnation. So Jesus just ignores them. I love that. But they won't go away. So he just stands. I love this. And this is a lesson for you and me. He just stands up. He says, well, let the one who's without sin throw the first stone. You get it started. And he just sits down and he writes. And what's he writing in the sand, in the dirt? Probably all their sins. Because he's God and he knows their hearts. And they start to trickle away, starting with the oldest who have the worst track records, right? Down to the youngest. And then Jesus is there and he says, where are your accusers? He says, no, none have left. And he says, well, I don't condemn you either. But he doesn't leave it at that, and he says, go and sin no more. So what's the lesson? What is Jesus trying to teach us in this? And I believe it's this. I think the lesson is not so much for the woman caught in adultery as it is for the guys who brought her. I think he's confronting them. I think they all learned a good lesson, and the lesson is this, is that it's better to show mercy than to show judgment. Don't be quick to judge. We don't know people's circumstances. We don't know why they did the things they did, and it's not up to, yes, we can say something's right or wrong, but it's not up for us to be God and say, well, this is what should happen. This is what should happen to this person. Because between you and me, I've got my own sins, my own weaknesses, my own stuff to deal with, rather than worrying about somebody else. But the question then is, well, if we're not supposed to judge them, how do we respond to people in our lives we encounter who are struggling with things or have things that are not according to what God would have us do? How do we help them? How do we reach out? Turn with me to John chapter 4, because this is almost the same story, except in this case it's Jesus who's dealing with the women and not these cranky old men. This is another woman who is an outcast by virtue of what she did. She was married 5 times, and the reason we know that she's an outcast is because she's going out to get water in the hottest part of the day, which is noontime. Why would she go out at 12 o'clock? I lived in the Mojave Desert for 8 years. You don't go out and get water in the middle of the day. You stay inside with the air conditioning. So why is she out there? Well, she's out there because all the other women go out in the morning when it's cool, and she doesn't want to be with them because she's an outcast. She's a person that's been judged by her community. She's looked down on, and nobody wants anything to do with her. So how does Jesus deal with her? Look at verse 10. First he asks for a drink of water, and then he says to her, if you knew the gift of God, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Okay? So he goes into this whole thing about living water and what it is that she wouldn't have to go out there because this water flows up from inside of her. He's speaking metaphorically of the gospel. But she doesn't understand that, and she's thinking, wow, this could solve all my problems. I don't have to be around these cranky women that come and, when I go out there in the morning with them, I could just have living water and never have to come here again. Give me that living water. In other words, Jesus is showing her another way beyond this water that she can have, what she can find for herself in this life, the satisfaction she derives from water. He says, I've got something better even than water. So he piques her interest. He gives her a hope for something better. Okay? Now, look on to verse 15. The woman says, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never go back." And Jesus then says, "Go call your husband and come back." And she says, "I have no husband." And of course he says, "Yeah, you're right. You have had 5, and the one you're with now you're not married to." In other words, now what he's doing, he's saying, this is what's holding you up. This is the thing that's keeping you from receiving this gift that I have for you. So he's not judging her. He's just saying, this is a problem, and you need some help with this. You need to work on this in your life. This is hurting you. You ever gone to somebody and you're a friend of theirs and you see what they're going through, or a family member, and it's really hard, but you go talk to them in a kind, loving way and say, you need help with this? It's not an easy thing to do, but Jesus is such an approachable person, and for some reason she has no doubt of his concern and his compassion for her, that she goes ahead and she listens and she answers and responds and everything else to this gift. And then he talks about this whole understanding of what this water is like, worshiping God in spirit and in truth. And then she says at the end, "Well, I don't understand all this stuff you're talking about, prophet man. I don't understand all these big things. I want this living water. I don't quite get that, but I know that when the Messiah comes, he will reveal it to me, to everybody." And then look down to verse 28. Jesus says, "I'm the Messiah." Now look what she does with that. In verse 28, "Then the woman left her water jar and went back to the city and told everybody who he was." She has the water. She's not even interested in the water from the well anymore, because she did. She received. She got the understanding just by no other reason that she was affiliated with Jesus. She spent some time with him, and Jesus himself gave her this gift, gave her this love, let her know, "I do not judge you. Go and sin no more." And she realized at that time God accepted her. So what do we do with this? People need to get to know you. People need to get to know you, and they need to get to know the church. They need, because it's only through you are they going to encounter Jesus Christ. You're not going to argue somebody into the kingdom. You're not going to scare somebody into the kingdom. You're not going to condemn and judge somebody in the kingdom. The way you're going to bring them into the kingdom, the way we bring them in, is that they get to know us. They get to understand what Jesus is about. Because Jesus is not about judging. He's not about condemning. He's about showing people a new way to live and setting people free. Free from the things that are shackling them, the sins that drive us down and make us miserable. He says, this is how the Son of Man will set you free. You can have this living water and receive it from me. It'll give you joy, peace, and everything else. The problem we run into in our society is that we don't really, a lot of us in America anymore, we don't really think that 5 or 6 marriages is necessarily a bad thing, or this or that's a bad thing. We're in the attitude now is like, well, don't judge me. Don't judge somebody else. Morality is relative. It doesn't, your understanding of what's right and wrong might be different than mine. And so now, if anything, the church is being judged for being intolerant, for being judgmental against this or that practice. And you can pick your ism, or you can pick your whatever it is you want, you focus on in the news. You can say, well, this is where the church is being judged for this issue, this moral, this ethic, or whatever. So what do? How do we get the message of Jesus out when we're not the ones that are judging? Some people are judging us. They got to get to know us. There's a priest by the name, his name was Thomas, he's dead now, but his name was Thomas Hopko. And Thomas Hopko was also a seminary professor, but he was in a church, and a man came up to him, very angry, and he wanted to argue with him. And he says, "Why are you against same-sex marriage? What's wrong with my marriage with my partner? Why are you judging me? You must be really bad people to do this." And so what would you do if somebody came to you and accused you of that? How would you respond? He said this, "I'll be happy to talk to you about this. I will be happy to engage you in any conversation you want, but you have to get to know the church first. You have to come to church and understand what we're about. Don't judge us on one little issue you don't understand. You've got to come in contact with the Lord Jesus Christ, and this is a place where you're going to find him." Because do you see what's the similarity between these two women is? The real similarity is because both of them met Jesus. If you can get people, if I can get people who are angry with the church or angry about this or that or have all these issues, if you can bring them into church, I'm not saying bring them to church and I'll preach at them. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about you. Get them here. Get them into your lives. Let them know how much value they are and listen to them and give them that living water. Isn't that cool? That God, and we're going to have a baptism. Kellen's going to receive that living water today, right? Yeah, right there. And very exciting. And Lauren is going to be, she's saying, give me that water. I'm thirsty, Lord. Fill me up. Well, she's not saying that. But it is kind of interesting. But it's exciting that you have that opportunity. And all you have to do is bear this in mind. You are not going to convince anybody about any strong argument. You're going to convince them by your love.